joining us. Excellent.
Okay,
now we're going. Okay. Yeah, everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is it's a great pleasure to introduce to you Enzo, who I was introduced to a month or two ago through some other contacts in my early stages of researching for the Tuscany Environment Foundation. I was trying to get to grips with the issue of plastic pollution and the sort of waste management issues. And through a mutual friend of ours, David Newman in England, who has worked also in Italy for many years in the waste management sector, he said very definitely that I must meet Enzo Favoino and get acquainted with the Zero Waste Network. Because as it turns out, in Tuscany itself, there is a little place up near Lucca, a place called Capanori, which a number of years ago was planning to open an incinerator. And there was such an objection to this that the town got together. They basically went on a different direction. And this is what Enzo's going to hopefully talk to us a bit about today, the principles of zero waste, because I was looking into projects that were either about removing plastic or harvesting plastic from the sea, trying to upcycle or recycle. And it became clear to me that really this wasn't getting, I mean, these are obviously sort of important and noble causes, but it wasn't getting to the heart of the problem, which is just too much waste, too much plastic. It's a problem that we essentially can't recycle our way out of. And so it feels to me that we need to turn off the tap somehow. We need to find a way to reduce our waste. And I'm sure, there's many of the other directors of the foundations here today who, I've spoken to as well. I've seen some of their amazing projects across the world in trying to tackle this subject as well. So in my brief conversation with Enzo, it became clear to me that what he was saying would be of a huge benefit to all of our whole organization, to the Conservation Collective. So I really wanted him to share his expertise and his wisdom with all of us here. It's a huge subject. It's a massive problem. And I believe the work that Enzo's doing with the Zero Waste Network should be able to give us a clear guideline about where the direction of travel we need to be on to really, really tackle this problem fully. So it's a real pleasure to introduce him today. I wanted to mention, the more I looked into Enzo, the more I realized that he is so devoted to his subject. He's a champion ice swimmer as well. He's one of two Italians who have swum the ice mile, I believe,
indeed.
Near freezing waters. Here's some of the press clippings of him. He regularly swims kilometers in icy rivers, lakes, seas.
Well, unfortunately, not during summertime, unfortunately, because the water is already around 30 degrees centigrade right now. But anyway,
I think you prefer the cold weather, but it's a great testament to him, his devotion to his subject. He does this partly because of a passion, but also to raise awareness for the problems of the sort of plastic pollution entering our waters in so many ways. So he really is 100% devoted to his subject, and so I'll stand aside. I'll let you take it from here, and so we've got lots and lots to get through and lots of questions at the end, I think. So the floor's yours.
Thanks, Ed. Nice words, and yes, indeed, this is something I'd like to transfer from to each other field. I'm keen on practicing swimming, and this is a further reason why I got so sensitized about the state of our oceans becoming a plastic soup. And the other way around, of course, I try also to to pick on the environmental problems in order. We have got our banner. We take it to the World Championship on ice swimming. We were in Slovenia last year in Bled right before the lockdown. And we have got our banner. We say swimming in the ice against climate change and for zero waste. And this is a good way to raise awareness because this is quite unusual, you know, to see people swimming in the ice. So why are you doing that? First of all, because we like it. And secondly, to raise awareness about of environmental problems. Anyway, with no further ado, let me share my screen. I have got actually, yeah, we divided my contribution in two parts. The first one will be a framing presentation about the way that zero waste programs do work, because that's, I'm sorry, let me go to the beginning. Yes, here we are. Can you see my slides right now?
Yes, we can see them.
That's great. We are all set up. I would like to frame the way the zero waste strategy, vision, and practice works, because that's the framing context in which we try also to carry out our campaigns to tackle the plastic issues. To start with, this is basically my outline, the outline of my presentation. We have got a few questions to answer. Typically, we list the points which may be of interest to the audience in 3 bullet points. First of all, what is the zero waste methodology? Is there anything like something that helps us go towards minimization of residual waste? Secondly, how does it work in cities? Because zero waste are basically programs based on communities. And indeed, Edward already brought up that the cradle of zero waste in Italy and Europe was in Tuscany, Capannori. Well, it's not a small city. It totals 45,000 people. They adopted zero waste back in 2007, the first zero waste municipality in Italy and Europe. And now they are around 86% separate collection, but best of all, they are minimizing residual waste to around 50 kilograms per inhabitant in year. The third question is, does it deliver results? Does it do the job? What are the possible achievements, not only in terms of environmental benefits, but also societal benefits, such as jobs, economical benefits to the concerned communities, and so on and so forth. But let me start from circular economy, because this is a buzzword. We know everybody's talking about circular economy. Sometimes they try to insert in circular economy something that does not belong to circular economy, such as incineration. Incineration cannot be considered as circular economy, because circular economy is all about retaining materials in the system in their highest and best status for as long as possible. So reuse is part of circular economy. Recycling and composting are part of circular economy. Even downcycling may be part of circular economy. But incineration is basically destructive of resources and materials, and so it is considered to be a leakage of resources from the circular economy models. However, in linear economy, which is based on the take, make, waste principle, you know, we take out resources from the environment, we make them into products, and then we have to dispose of the final waste. In the last few decades, actually, Europe had already shifted to a recycling economy. Since 1975, the first Waste Framework Directive, it was mandating the need to prioritize recycling. But in recycling economy, we try to recycle as much as possible. But then we come up with some waste, with some discards, and we have to dispose of that in a safe way. Shifting towards a circular economy, as I already told you, we want to keep the materials in the loop in the highest status for as long as possible. So it's all about retaining materials. And this also has to include the precious work done by continued redesigning of the system of industrial production, because we have to address those materials which are hard to recycle right now, to make them into materials which are reusable or recyclable or compostable in the near future. Also, it is noteworthy that the European Commission themselves, when they issued the first draft proposal on the circular economy package, dated 2014, they subtitled it a zero waste program for Europe. We then had, as the commissioner for the environment, Janez Potočnik, one of the fathers of circular economy, and he had understood the potential of zero waste. Zero waste is basically the perfect toolkit to make the vision of circular economy into operational reality. Because in zero waste programs, we have got everything we need to fully deploy the potential of circular economy. We have got curbside collection, we have got composting programs, we have got reduction programs, we have got reuse programs, pay-as-you-throw, deposit return schemes, and waste audits on residual waste. I will go back to that in a while. However, we as a network, Zero Waste Europe is a network of networks. We are currently in 27 countries, also outside the European Union, because we have got some countries which are affiliated with Zero Waste Europe and are not in the European Union yet, such as Ukraine or Belarus or Albania. Of course, we are very much looking forward to them joining the European Union. But in the meantime, we are aligning at least our agendas regarding sustainable waste management, proposal for circular economy, proposal for zero waste. We have got our case histories, the trailblazers, the zero waste champion districts such as Contarina. Contarina is placed in northeastern Italy, and it's probably the large area with the highest average recycling rates in the world. They cover a population of 1 million inhabitants, including the province capital Treviso, and the average separate collection rate there is already 88%. This is the average, so with peak numbers above 90%. Or other case histories such as Vernica, one of the trailblazers in Slovenia. Slovenia is currently the world leader in separate collection, and there is a specific reason for that. I will go back to that in a while. Or Argentona in Spain, but we have got many more from Romania, Salacia, from the United Kingdom itself, and so on and so forth. So feel free to go to the Zero Waste Europe website, and you may download free of charge all the case histories if you want to dig deeper into what made it possible for such communities to achieve such ambitious targets. This is Cabanori. And the guy you see here with his pupils is Rossano Ercolini. Rossano Ercolini, a primary school teacher. Since he was telling his pupils, he was teaching his pupils about health, safety, wash your hands, and something like that. And then they wanted to build an incinerator in his own community. And so he told himself, how can I afford having an incinerator in my community while I teach my pupils about health and safety? So he proposed shifting to a zero waste model. This was done back in 2007. So they became the European trailblazers in zero waste programs. Rossano is currently the president of Zero Waste Europe and of Zero Waste Italy as well. And he was awarded in 2013 the Goldman Prize, which is considered to be the Nobel Prize for environmental activism. So he's a VIP when it comes to environmental campaigning and awareness raising on environmental issues. How does zero waste work? This is a basic zero waste work program. The commitments, the zero waste commitments we ask from municipalities or communities or districts, whatever is the jurisdictional entity we work with. We want them to implement curbside collection. Probably, you know, I have seen, you're basically based in Europe, right? The audience, I have seen family names from the United Kingdom, someone from Italy, someone from Greece, and something like that. Probably, you know, that it spells differently in American English. It's C-U-R-B. I found it myself to my dismay when I was there the first time because I was using K-E-R-B for curbside, and they were not understanding me. And so I said, but this is curbside collection at the doorstep. So they said, you mean C-U-R-B? Okay, that's it. Curbside, anyway, it sounds the very same way. It is collection at the doorstep, and it has to include organics. Then we want them to implement waste prevention practices at the local level, such as promoting home composting, promoting the washable nappies, promoting packaging-free shops, water from the tap, and so on and so forth. Also, we want them to implement at a later stage pay as you throw. You know, with curbside collection, we consider curbside collection to be the springboard towards the zero waste. Because with curbside collection, in typical conditions, you achieve between 70 and 80% separate collection, if you include the organics. The organics always have to be in the scheme. With pay as you throw, you typically halve residual waste. So if you were at 70%, you tend to go towards 85. If you were at 80%, you tend to go towards 90% separate collection. Then we want to check composition of residual waste. We are zero wasters, but we are totally in love with residual waste because it's an incredible inventory of information about what's wrong, what is a mistake in the current system, what is hard to recycle, what is hard to compost, what is hard to reuse in the current system, so we can give a feedback to industrial responsibility to tell them, hey, please redesign your stuff into something which is more reusable, compostable, or recyclable in the near future. By doing that, our municipalities are continuously minimizing residual waste. And this is the true spirit of zero waste. I always say a zero waster is a person who's always happy and never satisfied. We are always happy because we know we have to rejoice, we have to celebrate about the achievements we make. But also we are never satisfied because even at 95% recycling, there are still 5 precious steps towards perfection. And so we just celebrate one night and the following day, we go to the mayor and tell him, okay, so what's next? Because we still have got 5% residual waste. This is reporting about Contarina. As you can see, they started with more than 200 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste. And they're currently around 50 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste. Probably you know that the average waste, municipal solid waste production for the average European is half a ton, 500 kilograms. So achieving 50 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste means we are damn close to zero if we consider the starting point. But also, since they are always happy and never satisfied, they already planned for the midterm goal. They want to reduce residual waste by a further 80%, achieving 10 kilograms per inhabitant and year by 2023. I already drew your attention towards the importance of organics. The importance of organics is twofold, not only quantitative. You know, organics are still the largest percentage of materials inside municipal solid waste. Typically between 30 and 50%, depending on various parts of Europe, whether it is an urban situation versus a rural situation, the local economic and societal conditions, and so on and so forth. However, without the organics, there is no possibility to achieve the highest recycling rates. In Europe, we currently have a midterm target for preparation for recycling and reuse, which is net recycling, of 65% by 2035. So in order to achieve 65% net recycling, so we will have to discount the rejects from composting and from recycling, we will have to get somewhere between 75 and 80% separate collection. At least, this is the minimum target, not the maximum one. And there is no possibility to get there if we do not include the organics. But hang on, there is also an obligation stipulated in the Waste Framework Directive for an obligation on separate collection of organics as of January the 1st, 2024, everywhere in Europe, everywhere in Europe. There is another angle about the importance of organics, which is the operational importance. If we are effective in capturing the organics, we can minimize their percentage in residual waste, so we can sharply reduce the collection frequency for residual waste. This leads to cost optimization of the system. So whenever they tell us, but separate collection is expensive, nothing like that. We have got a strong evidence, rock solid evidence that it may be cost optimized. But also, if you sharply reduce the collection frequency for residual waste, mixed garbage, people will be pushed to separate better also the dry recyclables, such as plastics, glass, paper, metals, and so on and so forth. It is important, so, to make the system user-friendly when it comes to collection of the organics. In Italy, we have long established a well-performing schemes. By far, most of the food scraps which are currently collected in Europe are collected in Italy. 80% of the population in Italy is already connected with such systems. And we tend to make the system user-friendly, tidy, comfortable by means of compostable bags. With the compostable bags, you know, the bins are clean, the kitchen caddies are clean, there is no yuck. They maximize participation, we maximize diversion, we minimize percentage of organics in residual waste, which, as I already told you, leads to further optimization of the system. This is not only possible in small rural villages. Italy is currently hosting, I'm not discussing Milan because I'm based in Milan, but because it is one reference model for us. Milan did never declare a zero waste commitment, but when it comes to separate collection, they are doing very, very well. Currently, Milan is the city with a population above 1 million inhabitants. Milan totals 1.4 million inhabitants plus 800,000 daily commuters working in the city and producing food scraps in the city. But despite such a complicated situation, Milan is the city above, with a population above 1 million inhabitants with by far the highest recycling rate in Europe. It is currently between 65 and 70%. Thanks to the organics. As you can see, Milan is currently collecting more than 100 kilograms per inhabitant in year organics, which are totally diverted from incineration and landfill. They go to an anaerobic digestion and composting site. And this corresponds to some 87% of the total organics generated by the city, which are collected and diverted towards composting. Whereas only 13%, as we calculate from the composition of residual waste, may still be found in residual waste. But also, to make you confident this may be done everywhere around the world, these are the ethnic groups living in Milan. We have got 40,000 Filipinos, 35,000 Egyptians, Chinese, Peruvians, Ceylonese, Romanians, Ecuadorians, and so on and so forth. And they all do separate collection, which means there is nothing such as a culture that may be enabling separate collection or working against separate collection. If we design the system properly, if we run the system properly, people just behave. So it is the organizational context that triggers the proper behavior by each and everybody. Ljubljana was the first national capital to adopt a zero waste practice back in 2014. It was together with other 4 municipalities in Slovenia. We convinced them not to build the planned incinerator. They totally switched to a zero waste strategy. And yes, this was the announcement in front of the town hall. This is the mayor, Rossano Ercolini, myself, and other people. And this is why Ljubljana is ranking higher and higher on the mainstream media. This is from the Independent, from no recycling to zero waste, how Ljubljana is rethinking its rubbish. You have to consider that Slovenia is a Central Eastern European country. So they only joined the European Union in 2004. In 2004, they were as low as some 2 or 3% separate collection rate, as all the Central Eastern European countries. And now they are the front runners worldwide. Currently, Slovenia is higher than 70% as the national average, just because they gave up the plans to build the incinerator and they are fully deploying the potential of circular economy. Also, we are moving further eastward. This is from Romania, Salacea or Shalax, because they are bilingual in northwestern part of Romania. They speak both Romanian and Hungarian. And in a comparatively short time frame, they went from 3% to 70%. Once again, 5 streams. This is for residual waste. This is for the organics. This is for glass. This is for paper. This is for plastics and metals. And once again, the vented kitchen caddies and compostable bags, which may be paper as well. Then I told you The importance of checking composition of residual waste. In residual waste, we find the next target of our actions. For instance, we lately found an increasing amount of coffee capsules. Don't tell Italians how fond they are about drinking coffee, of course. And needless to say, as a zero waster, I prefer old ways of brewing coffee, such as the mocha. But also we have to accept that we have to take on the challenges of modern life. So we have got problems with offices. In offices, it's very tough to consider brewing coffee with a mocha. So they use the coffee capsules. Well, we sent a letter to the coffee producers and we told them, why don't you make your coffee capsules into something which is fully compostable? Because in a coffee capsule, more than 90% of the weight is compostable, the coffee grounds. Whereas the capsule, it's plastics, so it is not compostable. So replace it with compostable plastics. This is one of the few applications where compostable plastics make sense because it carries along also other organic stuff to be composted. And so now all the main coffee producers in Italy and also in other countries, they have got also the compostable coffee capsules, which may be taken away from residual waste and co-collected with organics to go towards composting. Then the cloth nappies, we promote the cloth nappies. They're important because otherwise single-use nappies will concentrate in residual waste. Consider that in those municipalities achieving 80 or 90% separate collection, all the non-recyclable stuff is highly concentrated in residual waste. And so nappies sometimes achieve 30 or 40% of residual waste. So we promote the cloth nappies. We know the main barrier is behavioral change because we cannot compel everybody to wash the nappies. Some of them don't want to wash the nappies, and we have to accept it. So for instance, we have promoted some pilot schemes as the Lavanda project near Bologna, run by a social cooperative. They involve and employ disadvantaged people. They serve crash schools, kindergartens, and also the families taking their babies there. They rent out the clean nappy. They take back the dirty nappy. They wash it in a centralized way, and they turn a disposal cost into new jobs and new wages. And this is the beauty of zero waste programs. So how much may zero waste deliver? You know, it's easy to discuss how ambitious we may be discussing about Italy, because Italy it was traditionally considered to be a laggard, one of the countries with the least performing separate collection and recycling systems. We started intensive separate collection, including organics, in 1993. And now with the latest data sets, these are the official numbers as elaborated by the Environmental Protection Agency. You can see there are more than 3,000 municipalities above 70%, more than 1,000 above 80%, and even 122 above 90%. But we like using new metrics of sustainability, which is minimize the residual waste in kilograms per person, because the recycling rate doesn't capture the importance of reduction. It's only about the waste we produce, the recycling rate. We want these new metrics, and as you can see, more than 2,000 municipalities in 2019 were already below 100 kilograms, 350 below 50 kilograms, and even 39 below 30 kilograms per inhabitant and year residual waste, damn close to zero. So let me put the icing on the cake, the societal and economic benefits, discussing again the Contarina district in northeastern Italy, one of our zero waste champion districts. As you can see, after implementing the zero waste programs, they went to roughly 90% separate collection. They did not incur an increase in the cost of waste management. In typical European conditions, the more you recycle, the more you save, because landfilling and incineration are hell expensive, as they have to be, of course, because this is what the economists call internalization of environmental externalities. A landfill cannot be just a hole in the ground. In Europe, there is an obligation on pre-treatment of whatever gets landfilled. There is a financial liability by the landfill owner for 30 years after the landfill is closed. And this all increases the gate fees for landfilling and incineration. For incineration, we have got the tighter and tighter limit values for air pollution control and so on. So we save money by means of zero waste programs. But the best part is that with the same cost or even slightly less cost, as in this case, we are rewarding less technology, less infrastructure, and more people. They went from 58 waste collectors to 84 waste collectors. So it is 26 more households, more families striving on zero waste programs. And this is the beauty of zero waste. Okay, last but not least, I touched very briefly on incineration. You already understand we do not support incineration. It causes problems with lock-in, and we have got solid evidence of the damage, the harms of incineration to circular economy. We cannot afford a wasteful circular economy. Unfortunately, many times we consider circular economy only in terms of percentage. European targets themselves, they are defined in terms of percentages. 65% net recycling by 2035. But then what's important is how much municipal solid waste is a citizen producing in different countries. And you can see that on top of Europe, there is Denmark, not Malta or Cyprus, which are tourist islands, but Denmark, because Denmark has 26 incinerators in a country totaling only 6 million people. And so they have got no driver for to increase the commitment towards reduction, towards redesigning of the system, towards more recycling, and so on and so forth. They are locked in the need to produce waste to feed the incinerators, to ensure the payback of incineration. So percentage is only tell part of the truth. I already told you about Slovenia, but let me end up with a comparison. On the one hand, we have got the situation in Denmark, 844 kilograms per person in year. 50% of that is currently incinerated, 422 kilograms per person in year. 25% of that becomes slags and ashes, which means more than 100 kilograms per person in year of slags and ashes, still needing landfill. So this goes against the wisdom they would like us to pick on, that incineration minimizes landfills. It does not actually. On the other hand, we have got our zero waste champion districts in northeastern Italy producing as little as 350 kilograms per person in year. 85% of that is recycled, so residual waste is as little as 50 kilograms per person in year. And the best is, since they do not have any incinerator, they are not locked in the need to produce mixed garbage. And so they have got this commitment to reduce residual waste by a further 80%, getting down to 10 kilograms per person in year by 2023. So actually, who is minimizing landfilling? It is not incineration, it is zero waste programs. So walk on, be confident, and be happy, albeit never satisfied.
Brilliant. Thank you, Enzo. Gosh, that was amazing. We're getting lots of messages to people to send the recording to already. We haven't even finished the second presentation yet. I think we'd scheduled to do a Q&A at the end for both of the presentations. Would you still be happy to do that? To go straight into the other one, or has anyone got any burning questions?
As you like it. Yeah.
I had a quick question because, working in Italy in this sector as well, it seems like we're having to go from comune to comune to convince them to adopt these policies. But Slovenia is obviously did it adopt it as a national policy, or was it just for Ljubljana?
No, that was not a national policy. It was, as I already told you, zero waste strategies are based typically on the community level. Municipalities are the proper dimension to work at. But since Ljubljana totals a population of 400,000 people out of a total population in Slovenia of 2 million people. So whatever happens in the national capital exerts an impact on the national practice and policy. But if I may top it up, I know you're based in Grosseto, Edward, which is a very beautiful area. By the way, not so well performing when it comes to separate collection, just because you know it yourself. Instead of curbside collection, in most municipalities, the public waste management company, which is dealing with waste in southern Tuscany, opted for bring systems, and bring systems are way less performing than collection at the doorstep. That's been a very long debate with them, a very long confrontation in order to try and move them towards.
Those are the cassonetti, the famous.
That's right, cassonetti.
Right. So we
dumpsters,
have,
you may call them dumpsters or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have one for indifferenziata, which means anything. We have one for multi-materiale, which is actually metal, plastic, and it's slightly anarchic. Yeah, it doesn't seem like.
This is basically why, you know, this all valid for whichever the country, you know. When you consider the national average hides large differences. So Italy is currently ranking third in Europe and the world after Slovenia and Germany. Slovenia overcame Germany just because in Germany they have got too many incinerators. And so these recycling rates have been basically stagnating in the last few decades, okay? They are still around some 67, 68% in Germany. Italy is at 61.3%. But if you go to northeastern Italy, you find districts with 90%, or even Sardinia. Sardinia is another great story to tell because it was the least performing region 10 years ago, with as little as 3%. They consistently implemented policies for curbside collection and above all on organics. And now they are the runner-up right after Veneto with 75% regional average. So the national average, you know, it's including large differences. And in Tuscany itself, you have got Capannori and you have got Grosseto, unfortunately. Yeah, that's the problem.
So is there nothing that the national government in Rome can legislate for to sort of make sure that the comunes and regions are going in a direction, or is it just have they got no power?
Well, there is something, not only in Italy, but in each and every European country. Of course, I'm here to discuss the situation also elsewhere, if you so want. I've been working for a very long time with the UK institutions such as DEFRA, the Environment Agency, WRAP, the Waste and Resources Action Programme. So I know quite a bit about the situation in the UK. However, well, we have got in the National Environmental Act, a provision that stipulates, it used to stipulate 65% separate collection target by 2012. Now the new target is aligned with the European mandate to achieve 65% net recycling, which equals, as I already told you, to something between 75% and 80% separate collection. So there is actually a mandate. Then, of course, enforcement, policing, it's another issue. Typically, there is a rewarding and penalizing scheme, which is based on the landfill tax. So when you dispose of your residual waste, the eco tax you will pay will be higher or lower, depending on a series of factors. The main being whether or not you have met the national obligations for separate collection or for net recycling now.
So it's going beyond the national level, it's going to the EU level. You mean that there's...
That's right. Even though the European mandate is on member states. Then if member states, they say, we want to achieve 65% at national level, which typically implies, okay, we assume that cities will do less, whereas smaller municipalities will do more. But we do have the example from Milan, and Milan is doing that. And if the dirty Italians can play with dirt, everybody can play with dirt, you know. So it's a very good example. Also, when I go to Greece, there is a Greek there, right? Pavlos.
Yes.
Greek. Kalimera, Pavlos. When I go to Greece, I always say, you know, una faccia, una razza, which means same face, same race. It sounds very, very convincing to say, hey, they are doing that in Italy. If you say they're doing that in Stockholm, it's not that convincing for Maltese, for Greeks, for Cyprians, and something like that. But Italians, they are doing that. And so everybody can do that.
I love that. A positive, inspiring note. I wonder if we could, I'm just aware of the time, and I wonder if we could move on to the next one, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions after that as well.
I'm ready.
Fantastic. Let's go. Let's do it.
Just one moment. So I switch. So it should be popping up soon. It's already there, right?
Yep.
Great. So when discussing plastics, we are in the typical field of an environmental issue on which we have to think globally while acting locally. And actually, local actions have to interpolate global strategies in order to make them more effective. This is an outline of my presentation. I will share with you a little bit about the background. What are the global numbers of the drama, the plastic drama, the plastic dam? So why the initiatives, the global initiatives on plastics? What are the elements in specific of the European strategy on plastics? So we can discuss also what is requested from each and every member state. Well, of course, many of you are from United Kingdom, but you know that the UK government and the Scottish executive have said they want to keep as aligned as possible with European environmental policy. So this is also a good proxy to understand what's next also in the United Kingdom. And then we have to discuss whether the European current commitments are sufficient or not, or we have to go beyond. And then if we have time, we may leave some time for plastics and COVID, because when discussing reuse, this was popping up also in the questions you submitted right before my presentation. Can we also promote reusables during a pandemics? Yes, indeed. We started a pilot program on reusable Tupperware in supermarkets during the pandemics with full approval by the health authorities. This may be codified based on scientific evidence and may be fully implemented with no health risk, rather the contrary, making you safer instead of making you more vulnerable, because sometimes single use makes you more vulnerable while it generates a false sense of safety. However, well, plastics, they are striking us because of the loss of beauty of our landscapes. We usually say, yeah, images are more important than 1,000 words. These are the pictures by Chris Jordan, the Midway albatross. You know, they die by choking, being choked by plastic caps. They see them floating on the sea surface. They are misled into thinking it is food. They eat it, and so on and so forth. So this opened the eyes for many people around the world. It was extremely important. But there is a more insidious side of the plastic problem, the plastic crisis, which is microplastics. Unfortunately, we have got microplastics everywhere in the water we swim in or we drink, including bottled water. This is why we are talking about the plastic soup. We have got microplastics in the air we breathe. This is why we talk about plastic smoke. Microplastics have been found on high altitude snow, on glaciers, in the Arctic Sea, in the human placenta, so everywhere. Unfortunately, it's very, very pervasive. There was even a calculation about how much is the contribution of plastics to our weekly diets, which is 5 grams per person a week. So it's like a credit card a week per person. This is what we are eating in terms of plastics each and every week. Facts and figures. 80% of plastics that are threatening marine environment originate actually in inland sources. So we have to win the war on the mainland. It is a war which is causing its impacts above all, not only, but above all in the oceans, but we have to win the war on the mainland. 10 million tons of plastics are ending up in oceans a year, which means a truckload a minute. This is dramatic, a truckload a minute. So while I'm making my presentation, 20, 25 minutes, 25 more truckloads of plastics thrown into the sea. The recycling rate in the world, well, they tell us, we have got recycling, don't worry, keep using plastics, we may recycle that. But accept it. The recycling rate in the world currently is 15%. Historically, it was as low as 9%. In Europe, we have got extended producer responsibility, by which packaging producers have to take on the responsibility for take back of packaging, including packaging plastics, and they have to fund the system, giving money to municipalities to do separate collection, to do recycling programs and something like that. But despite this further driver, still we do only recycle between 40 and 50%, depending on different countries, of packaging plastics. The rest ends up in landfills, which is not good, or in incinerators, which is even worse because it's fossil carbon dioxide. So it adds on the carbon budget in our climate agenda, or it ends up dispersed into the open environments. Let me move on. The problem is also that much of the discarded plastics from recycling sites, they used to propel waste exports towards low-income countries. China, Southern Eastern Asia. So most of those countries now have enacted consistent regulations in order to prevent what we were calling scam recovery, because it was being shipped there based on the assumption it would get recycled somehow. But then there was no infrastructure. There were small companies based on families. They were hand sorting a small percentage of the valuable polymers, and the rest was being dispersed into the countryside or being thrown into the waterways, the rivers, or being burned every other week, which is not good, of course, for health and for the environment. But the real nightmare, actually, I took part in an international panel of experts who issued an article back in July 2020. It was published also in Science, the most important scientific magazine worldwide. It is titled Breaking the Plastic Wave. So we modeled what are the causes for plastic dispersion and what may be the effect for actions to implement in order to curb the problem. If we do not act, if we go on with business as usual, the waste generation for single-use plastics will double by 2040. The dispersion, the leakage of plastics into seas and oceans will triple by 2040. And the plastic stock into oceans will become 4 times as much by 2040. Of course, we cannot afford it. We have to act, and we have to do it now. And of course, a very complex issue needs many actions. There is no single action which is the silver bullet. We need a combination of different actions. For instance, in many Asian countries or African countries, there is a incredible importance of setting up and optimizing formal collection schemes. Because the problem is we are literally flooding them with fast-moving consumer goods, which are in single-use plastics. And we know there is no formal collection for after-use materials, for the final discards. So we need to establish formal collection. But as you can see, the main contributor should be reduction. 30% of the total solution by 2040 would be with reduction of avoidable plastics. So this was said by Edward in his preliminary statements. We have to close the tap. If we have got a tap which is spilling water in our house, instead of keeping mopping the floor, we should go and close the tap, of course. And the same we have to do with plastics. So what are the directions of the European agenda on plastics? The European Union adopted back in 2018 an European plastic strategy. This is still based mainly on recycling, improving recycling, which is already good in itself, but it is not enough. We carved the statement that recycling is not enough. It is good, but it is not enough. And the European Union says, we want to make the system circular. We want to minimize imports and exports. We want to drive more recycling infrastructure and improve existing one, because if we want to make the system circular, the system has to be made circular within Europe and not made into an oval to reach as far as China or Brazil. It has to be circular within Europe. We want to improve the use of recycled polymers, improving their quality, mandating minimum recycled contents. For instance, if I have to make a motorbike shape, there is no need to use virgin polymers. We can use 100% recycled polymers. If we have to use food contact materials, maybe we may need a certain percentage of virgin polymers, but also another percentage may be recycled polymers. So depending on sectoral applications, we may have a higher or a lower mandate on minimum recycled content. And also working on green public procurement, because there is a very high absorbing power by the demand potentially expressed by local authorities. For instance, if you have to install benches, floorings inside public parks, we can use recycled polymers. Also, we want to move reduction and reuse up in the system, because recycling is only plan B for sustainability. Plan A for sustainability is always reduction and reuse. And also, they announced, but now it is effective actually, so no question mark. There is a European plastic tax, which is charged on the polymers which have not been recycled. And it is as high as 800 euros per ton, which is comparatively high if you compare it with the market value of the polymers. So this is a further driving effect for better design, for better recyclability, better infrastructure for recycling in order to maximize the recycling rate. Also, in 2019, we had a second and most important action, which was a subset of the European plastic strategy, and it is worded the Single-Use Plastics Directive. This is a summary table. If we want to list the key provisions in the Single-Use Plastics Directive, there is an outright ban on a few items: straws, stirrers, single-use tableware, including plates and cutlery, cotton buds, balloon sticks, and all oxo-degradables. This is a specific issue for the United Kingdom, unfortunately, because the oxo-degradable issue is the oxo-degradable industry is very, very strong in the United Kingdom. But the oxo-degradables, they have been totally banned from Europe, because it is kind of the scientific method to produce microplastics. They do not degrade, they fragment into smaller pieces, so they enter the food web, they enter the oceans, they enter the drinking water, and so on and so forth. Also, it mandates product design requirements for barrels and caps, there is the connect the cap requirement. So the caps will have to be permanently connected to beverage barrels, so they do not get dispersed anymore into the oceans. There is a separate collection target. One of the most important provision of the Single-Use Plastics Directive is actually not a ban, but a target on separate collection for PET barrels, for beverages up to 3 liters. Why is it so important? Because there is no separate collection system which is able to achieve 90%. So your question may be, how can we get there? Deposit return systems. So we will have to switch back to deposit return systems. And this will be a big push to include, once again, DRS, deposit return systems, in the European Union. It is extremely important. And after the PET barrels, we may apply it as well as to cans and other materials still from the packaging sector. Okay, is this enough? This goes the good direction, but it is definitely not enough. Still, in the Breaking the Plastic Wave study we did, we also assessed the likely effect of what we call the current commitments, including the European Single-Use Plastics Directive. And in front of a business as usual scenario, which would get to 30 million tons of plastics lost into oceans by 2040, the current commitments would only trim the total impact by 7%, which is the good direction, but definitely not enough. We have to do more. So this also refers to individual behavior, individual choices. For instance, promoting reusable containers for fresh products such as meat cuts, ham cuts, dairy products, fish, Russian salad, whatever you may consider. Instead of purchasing them already packaged, we may go there with our own container. You bring your own container and you may use it in order to buy your stuff. Or promoting tap water once again. There are by now thousands of water houses across Europe. That's intriguing because you can see this one. There are 2 taps actually. One is for still water and one is for sparkling water. And if you ask yourself, okay, we understand the sparkling water, but what's the use of the still water? You're right. It's the very same water they can get at home, but they do not know. So we trap their interest with the sparkling water. They also get the still water. And after 1 month, we send them a nice letter signed by the mayor telling them, do you like the water, the municipal water? It's the very same water you can get at home from your own tap. So consider using it instead of purchasing bottled water. What is the role of the cleanups? The cleanups. This is Lewis Pugh. Does anybody know Lewis Pugh? He's a swimmer as well. He's the UN patron of the oceans. And he's also a nice swimmer, as I am. This is a picture which was taken in Mumbai, in India. They were doing a massive cleanup. They took away tens of thousands of tons of plastics, which were totally hiding the beach in Mumbai. And of course, anyway, we say the cleanups are not enough. The cleanups are not the fix, but they're important anyway. I'm sorry. No, I wanted to go here. No, unfortunately, maybe we have got a hidden slide. Let me. No, it's not there. Sorry for that. Anyway, I will tell you. What is the importance of the cleanups? First of all, they fight what we call trash blindness. Many people are blind on the problem. So if they see thousands of people, including maybe their friends and relatives, taking part in the cleanups, they will understand that we have got a problem. In second instance, this tables the issue on the political agenda, because once the politicians see so many people mobilizing on the cleanups, they understand it is important to bring forth policies to tackle the problem. And in third instance, they feed into what we call citizen science. You have seen the list of the items which will be banned, restricted in Europe, according to the Single-Use Plastics Directive. What may cross your mind is, how did the European Union come up with such a list? How did they make the choice? Those are the items which are most frequently found during the cleanups. And this is pure citizen science. It is science fed by observations by citizens. During the cleanups, not only are we collecting waste, but also precious information which is connected with the waste. Okay, let me go on. So we have to start closing the tap. We have to start avoiding avoidable plastics. Above all, working on single-use plastics. Let me also remark, I'm not against plastics per se. There is much of the plastics which are durable plastics, such as the chassis of the very same computer I'm talking to you from. Or we were discussing the car shapes or the motorbike shapes, and that's durable plastics. So it is not prone to being dispersed into the open environment. Rather, at the end of its life, we have to collect it and we have to recycle it back into new plastics. The main problem is with single-use plastics, which is mainly packaging plastics. That's the area we have to start working on. Also, during the cleanups, we wanted to fight the narrative which has been generated by the plastic industry. The plastic industry are trying to trick us into thinking that the culprit is bad management of plastic waste in Asia and Africa. This is partly true. The main contributors to ocean litter are 10 big rivers, 8 in Asia and 2 in Africa. But the fact is, we do the brand audits during the cleanups. The brand audits means classifying items not only by the typology of materials, but also by the brand of the producer. And this is what we come up with. So those plastics are dispersed in Asia and Africa, but are produced and designed in the global north, in the United States, in Europe, in the United Kingdom, in Italy. And as you can see, the winner is always Coke, and then Pepsi, and then Nestlé, and then Danone. There's also an Italian contribution with Perfetti, candy wrappers, and something like that. So we use these in order to tell the people, you know, to give them the nudge or to give them a kick in the ass, to tell them, hey guys, please redesign your stuff, because for the moment you're flooding the world with plastics which are made for being disseminated into the environment. Now let me go on. This is not so important. Bioplastics. Actually, I mentioned compostable plastics during my previous presentation, and I said there may be a merit in using compostable plastics for separate collection of the organics, but they are not a solution to plastic littering. Because if a turtle or a dolphin meets a bioplastic bag, doesn't make much difference to a conventional plastic bag in the end of the story. So a few key points. Bioplastics are not a solution to marine litter. Also, when discussing bioplastics, unfortunately, we use a very misleading definition, because bioplastics is conflating two different issues: bio-based materials, which are based on renewable sources, and biodegradable and compostable materials, which tend to degrade after the use. We've got solid and reliable standards for compostable plastics, those plastics which are deemed to be collected with organics. They have to end up in industrial composting sites. But the strategy cannot be far-reaching. It must be specified and codified only where there is separate collection of the organics, because such materials are not designed to degrade into the sea or the open environment, but only in very specific and codified conditions at composting sites. So only compostable bags for separate collection of the organics, or closed loop applications such as you have got a festival, a party, and there is no possibility to use reusable tableware. So that's a closed loop with local trained managers. They have got a separate collection system in place for the organics. You may tell people, okay, let's use compostable tableware. Then we collect it with organics and we send it to the composting site. Sorry, let me go on. Okay, so we said they make sense for a few what we call niche applications, such as the compostable bags. But if we consider a larger use, a widespread adoption, we may stumble upon many issues. A higher entropy, a higher confusion in the system. There is the problem of cross-contamination. People, you know, we have to consider ordinary people. They are not experts in material management. And so sometimes they will mistakenly consider a bioplastic as an ordinary plastic and the other way around. So we will have cross-contamination of both composting and mechanical recycling, because bioplastics ending up in recycling sites, they will hamper the physical properties of recycled polymers. But in the end of the story, the main point is the one which is underscored here with below. It is not fully sustainable. It's still a single-use material. So let's consider compostable plastics only where they make sense, such as a tool for separate collection, as the compostable bags. I already gave you heads up on oxo-degradables. They are basically conventional plastics, polyethylene, with a few biodegradable fillers. They are cheaper, but they are not safer. Rather the contrary. They are much more dangerous because they fragment into small pieces, so they do not degrade, but they disappear from sight. But this is not better for the environment. It is much worse for the environment. So this has been deemed by the European Union as the scientific method to produce microplastics entering the food web. And this is why they have been totally banned in the European Union by the Single-Use Plastics Directive. So in Europe, there is no possibility whatsoever, not for the oxo-degradable bags, nor for oxo-degradable tableware or whatever, to be made with oxo-degradables. Okay, I think I'm done for the moment. Then we have got the part on COVID, but I may go there. I need some rest because I'm not a mother tongue in English, and sometimes I need to take a breath, of course. So I will pick a few questions of yours, and then maybe we move on to the next last few slides on reuse systems and COVID-19.
Thank you, Enzo. That is fantastic. So much information. I'm not surprised that you're feeling tired. Jade's put a question into the chat, which I'm not sure if you can see, but it might be a nice starting point, which is, what is the most effective community engagement angle? How to raise awareness? Is it about education, recycling, business engagement? Jade's dropped off. Oh, Jade, are you still with us?
I'm still here, but I've got two children fighting while watching TV behind me, so I'm on a short string. So yeah, it was just more because, you know, really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you. But I guess just bringing it back down to that really small scale level, I was just thinking, what are the kind of, for someone like the Tuscany Environment Foundation, someone like Ed scratching his head right now, like, how do we get started? What would you say is the kind of, I guess, lowest hanging fruit in terms of, well, for us, both lowest cost, but also perhaps maximum impact?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And actually, we are working on many different levels. Of course, we work on individual responsibility by the most committed ones. But of course, we say for a circular economy vision and for a zero waste strategy, it's not important to have just a handful of committed zero wasters doing perfect. It is much more important to have many people who are not perfect, but who tend to work towards perfection. So while targeting perfection, we may accept the transitional imperfection in the system. Of course, when discussing the community engagement, as I already told you, in typical European conditions, the municipal level is the best level to work with. And of course, we tend to start with a bunch of committed people who engage with the municipal government. We want to convince the mayors, basically, of the deputy mayors, those ones who are tasked with environmental management, with waste management. And we want to convince them that it is better for the community. Not only does it bring in some environmental benefits, but also it saves money and it creates jobs. It benefits to the local economy. So once we do that, it is comparatively easy to table a zero waste agenda, which includes curbside collection, pay as you throw. You know, it has to be a phased calendar. We do not want to have everything done on the fly and overnight. It cannot be done overnight, but it doesn't take ages either. So we tell them, okay, next few months, let's start with curbside collection. Then once it's well consolidated, after 1 or 2 years, we may implement pay as you throw. In the meantime, we may start a reuse program with a municipal reuse center and something like that. It is also incredibly important that there is a very important bit in your question regarding the business engagement. New business models are an important part of circular economy. And you know, in circular economy, every day we are basically tackling a different issue, because with the study on the composition of residual waste, we have got the issue of the day. It may be single-use nappies, it may be hard to recycle plastics, it may be coffee capsules, it may be the tea bags, which are made of conventional plastics, unfortunately, by now. And so each and every day, you know, we are considering the way to have them redesigned or to implement new business models, such as the packaging-free shops. And it is not by chance that one of the first packaging-free shops in Italy was first established in Capannori, because Capannori had adopted a zero waste commitment. And so this created the good cultural and operational environment for a packaging-free shop. It is F. Corta. Now they have got shops in Milan, in Ravenna, I think I remember. Then there is Negozio Leggero in Turin and something like that. So it's a multi-level type of commitment.
Some really interesting ideas.
As you say, no silver bullet.
Sorry?
No silver bullet.
No, no silver bullet. Keep flexible.
Yeah.
But as I told you, it is important to keep the municipalities engaged, because they have got many jurisdictional powers to make decisions on better separate collection or better recycling, better composting, even though recycling and composting are a bit at the higher jurisdictional level, maybe the county, the province, the prefecture, depending on the country you're based in.
There's another question here. Tim and Christine, would you like to go?
Enzo, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. I think I interpreted from one of your last slides that the great majority of plastic entering the oceans is coming down Asian rivers. Are these countries either conscious of this problem or bothered about it and or doing anything about it?
Yes, I would say they are. Of course, many such countries are basically starting from scratch. Well, not so much China. China is becoming a developed country, as you know. It is overcoming the United States as the main economy in the world. So they have got the spending power in order to implement systems. And it is not by chance that China is now following the steps of the European Union. You know, as in every sector of environmental policy, typically Europe is the trailblazer, and then other areas of the world tend to follow Europe. In the case of plastics, the first two ones to adopt similar policies were Canada. Canada carbon copied the European strategy, and China. China is having a plastic strategy, a plastic agenda of their own, I'm trying to contribute and influence as much as possible. It's partly good, partly bad, but we are doing, our efforts in order to have it done the proper way. The problem is in many other countries in Southern Eastern Asia, because in many areas right there is no formal collection system for municipal solid waste. We are carrying out right now a training program for zero waste leaders in Southern Eastern Asia, which is covering Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. In Indonesia, it's 200 million people. It's one of the most crowded countries in the world, and they're living on islands. And so it's very, very sensitive when it comes to the cross relationships, plastics, and oceans. However, in many islands, they do not have any collection system whatsoever for municipal solid waste. So once again, we have to work from different angles. We have to promote right there and right now local reduction programs, driving people to consider reusable systems. Many islands have got a local economy based on 0 kilometer, and so reusable stuff such as bring your own container makes perfectly sense in those situations. But at the same time, we have to try and influence the national governments to implement as soon as possible national policies, not only for waste collection, but also for waste reduction. So we are working against time, of course. We are working against time. But unfortunately, the problem is already there. And thanks God, the international institutions are getting aware of that. If I may top it up with a statement by a very relevant officer from the European Commission. Probably there is the United Nations Environmental Assembly. The last one was in Nairobi 2 years ago. Until a couple of years ago, the main issue on the agenda was climate change, which is important, of course. 2 years ago, it was mostly plastics because of the European initiative on the plastic strategy and the single-use plastics directive. And so all the other countries were discussing, should we have a global treaty on plastics? This is on the agenda right now, a global treaty on plastics. In the final plenary, this high-level officer from the European Commission said, we know that the industry is ready to adopt new sustainable business models, but sometimes they need a nudge. Actually, when he said a nudge, he was meaning a kick in the ass. We need better regulations, we need directives, because we have to push them to adopt new business models. This is what we have to do.
Thank you, Enzo.
Enzo, I've got to thank you, Enzo, because I find that the subject from the start, a lot of the time I have my head in my hands and in desperation, and you carry this off with good humor and a lot of charm in it, and you're a real hero for this. You're really helping me see a way through. I was wondering if I might be able to use quickly a case study and use it. I'm struck by how you say that this works best on a local level, and our conservation groups are local conservation groups. That's part of our guiding philosophy, I suppose. I live in a comune called Magliano in Toscana. It's a small town in the province of Grosseto, 2,500 residents. And it's the typical kind of, rural town. For your shopping there, you're served by about 4 or 5 little generic, what they call the alimentari stores, the little shops that have a little bit of everything. And I've noticed, a couple of them in recent years have started selling more and more things loose, sfuso, including the really the more complicated ones, the detergents, shampoos, and things like that. Unfortunately, we learned not long ago that the mayor of the town, in all his wisdom, has recently sold one of the old. There was a a defunct Consorzio Agrario, an old building just on the edge of the town that had been lying derelict for some years, quite a big building. And he's gone and sold it to the Carrefour, who are have already started work. They're going to be opening a supermarket there planned in the next year or so. I wanted to know now, if you could give me some indications, maybe just some guidance step by step. I've already spoken to some of the shopkeepers because I see that this is a direct existential threat to their existence, these businesses that have been there for years. They're family, practically, the shopkeepers. I try to divide my time equally among them, try to give business to each of them. And I'm horrified by the idea of them losing their life's work, effectively. As I see it, the only way, we can't stop the supermarket opening, but we can perhaps push those shops there to go in a different direction, because I think that the supermarket model is one that's not compatible with zero waste. The problem, every time I go to a supermarket, that's when I end up with all of my plastic waste. That's where it seems to generate. If I do a shop in the local market and the shop's there, I can take my containers and things, I generate far less waste. And I think that the centralized business model of supermarkets means that it's very, very hard for them to eliminate these single-use plastics. What would be your advice? How can I guide our community of shopkeepers in Magliano to go? What would be the first step for us, let's say, to become on the road to being zero waste?
That would be exciting, I think. And of course, if you have got some support also from the municipal government, you would have wrapped it up the proper way. Of course, as long as the waste tax is a property tax, there is no incentive for the taxpayers to switch towards a zero waste behavior, because they will have to pay pretty much the same whether or not that they are zero wasters. So already implementing pay as you throw would be a driver for them to adopt more conscious behavior and opting for the packaging free shops instead of going to the supermarket. However, as I already mentioned, that we started pilot programs with supermarkets during the pandemics for reusables. It was based on, there are different systems for reusables. It may be product as a service, if you are being rented something, which is then taken back and washed and sanitized and then used again, or it may be bring your own container. Ours was based on bring your own container. This is made possible by a specific provision stipulated in the Climate Act in Italy. Many do not know, but there is the principle that stipulates the right for the consumer to use her own container, okay? And also there are subsidies from the national government up to 5,000 euros per each shops in order to implement a packaging-free corner. And this may be the case also for your local shops. However, when I was telling you, in our pilot program, we engaged with 2 big brands of the supermarkets. So also the supermarkets, they are getting mindful of that. You have to consider that there is a huge sentiment against plastics right now. And so most of the people, they are aware of the problem. And the first ones who pick on this sentiment, promoting a new business models, they will, how to say, we call it fidelizzazione in Italian. I don't know the way it sounds in English. Can you help me out a bit with that? They can permanently, attract customers going there because they want to have packaging-free purchases. That's it.
Exactly. So creating sort of a loyalty amongst the customers.
Loyalty. That's right.
Yeah. Mm.
The customer loyalty. Yeah, right.
Sorry, I asked rather a question here. There's
I know.
Of course, we cannot do a work plan in just 5 minutes, but I will be happy to keep connected with you and to make plans with you for the near future.
Yeah, and how to tackle the Say Toscana, the company that has the contracts for our part of the world for the waste management. How do we get beyond that?
Yeah.
I would like to ask a related question. Can I be heard? Hi. First of all, thank you very much, Enzo, for your very, very interesting and quite motivating presentation, especially the zero waste. Has given me lots of, I think, ideas and the kick in the ass that you talked about.
Pavlos.
In Greece, unfortunately, we are quite a way behind, and the region that I'm involved in is the Argolic, Spetses and Hydra, and the Peloponnese. And generally the entire Peloponnese is just, it's pretty tragic in terms of how we recite. It's just very, very, probably a few decades behind. And so what I wanted to ask is, I mean, obviously each mayor and municipality is different, but have you got any sort of general advice of how you get municipalities? And let me just add that, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. In Greece, because I've been, 10 years ago, I've been to various conferences about waste and what they're going to do in Athens and the various schemes. And the scheme that somehow always ends up being adopted is the one that is more focused on incineration. Even as you have compostable people, the sort of lobby making the case that no, it's actually more expensive and no, it's cheaper. Somehow it always goes to these very expensive projects. And there is various conspiracy, suspicion that part of the motivation for that is that municipality, a lot of these are projects funded by the regional government, which gets money from the European Union. And so because there's not money coming out of their immediate taxpayers, they prefer to have a bigger pie to be able to divvy it up to these big companies that they're the contractors that then come and do these pharaonic projects which rely on sort of collecting all the waste at once, and then there'll be this magical sorting somewhere and they'll burn it, and it's all supposed to be amazing, but it doesn't look as sort of convincing as the scheme that you proposed. So anyway, given that there may well be this sort of significant financial incentive preventing zero waste strategies from being adopted, do you have any advice of how you get municipalities on board, or is it just hoping that you have a good mayor?
I have got advice, and I have also got good news for you. Actually, I would divide the mainland Greece from islands. We know the new Greek government is very much supportive to incineration. We know that that's a problem. However, this is the good news. The European Union made it blatantly clear that no European fund may go to incineration and landfilling anymore. In all the lately stipulated granting programs, such as cohesion funds, which were highly affecting Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Malta, and so on. The Just Transition funds, the recovery funds, they adopted the do not significant harm principle, which explicitly excludes incineration from any funding. So incineration is due to be hell expensive. Probably they don't realize yet, the Greek governments, but they will realize in a while. But this mostly pertains to mainland Greece. You're a lucky guy because you live on islands. In Nasia, in the Cyclades. That's where I got engaged with my wife, by the way. She's Italian, but saying sagapo, it's much more romantic than saying I love you or ti amo. And so we got engaged in Greece with the Meltemi wine and something like that, bouzouki, and above all Retsina, of course. However, in islands, you would never consider building an incinerator in small islands. They built one in the Balears. The Balears are not a small island if you compare them with the Cyclades. But that was a huge mistake, and they're losing money because now they do not have waste during winter time when the waste production is much smaller. And that's the problem. Also, if you consider islands, in islands, you have to make the system as circular as possible in order to save money before saving the environment, because whatever cannot be recycled on the spot has to be shipped to the mainland, which is expensive for the islands. This is why we did, on behalf of the Italian Ministry of the Environment, as early as 2001, a specific, it was not called zero waste, but it was already called a circular economy program targeting small islands in Italy. We do not have as many as Greece, but still there are a few small islands such as Tremiti, Archipelago Toscano, Ustica, Aeolian Islands, Pantelleria, and so on and so forth. And we said, yeah, there is a need in small islands to switch to circular economy and to recycle and compost as much as possible on site in order also to minimize the cost besides maximizing the environmental benefits. So this is a very powerful argument. Then, of course, convincing a mayor is a different work. It's a different stuff. It may take time and commitment. In your shoes, I'd get connected. We have got a very good campaigner. She took part in one of the training programs we had in Tallinn in January 2020. Her name is Zana. She's in Paros, and she's carrying out a waste reduction program totally based on reusables. She's connecting all the local restaurants and bars in a common network to have a standardized format of reusables in order to minimize the cost, maximize logistic optimization of the system, and something like that. So I can pass the contact details on to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not easy. Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy.
One follow-up, if you don't mind, one very quick follow-up.
Please.
One of the main problems here is like a lack of composting, and I was just wondering, is that have you seen this done somewhere else, that you start up a basically voluntary composting system in the hopes just to get people on board and they start and it was very interesting from your presentation, they start actually separating it and then you create the groundwork.
This is a great question, and composting is actually my background. I'm an agronomist. And actually, I started my engagement in zero waste programs, starting with organics. Back in 1993, we were the first ones in Southern Europe to propose composting. They were telling us, but we are Italians, we cannot behave as the Germans. And we were using the very same argument I used with you. We said, but there's millions of Italians in the Netherlands, in Germany, in Sweden, doing separate collection. So why not in their homelands? So, okay. However, composting is magic, because it's incredibly scalable and flexible. So you can do it at whichever level you want to consider. Individual composting, community composting schemes. United Kingdom is the leading country worldwide when it comes to community composting schemes, but you may consider also the city of Zurich, which is the largest city in Switzerland. They manage they totally manage their organics by means of 700 community composting sites. So it may be done everywhere with very simple systems, wooden boxes. You can hire local expertise by local, I'm sorry, a momentary lapse of my memory, artigiani. Edward, help me out.
Artisans.
Artisans, yeah, artisans sounds like Italian. So you can do that in a very simple and cheap way. Even before starting an official composting program by the municipality, you can show them evidence this is working, people are taking part in that, they use the final end product. But I think it would not be overly difficult also to convince the mayor there, because of the cost argument I already shared with you. If they do not compost on site, and compost may be done everywhere, you may also co-compost organics and paper. So there is no need to ship paper on the mainland. If they do not do that, they will have to load it onto a ship and go to the mainland, which is hell expensive for them. So be confident.
Composting, yes. It's
yeah, composting is always the trigger, always.
Thank you very much for that.
May I, in a couple of minutes, share with you why reusables are fit for purpose also during the pandemics, because this may be important for you in your precious local actions. Or sometimes it may as well be that mayors, they will tell you, okay, no, I'm a very big fan of composting, I'm a very big fan of reuse programs, but now we have got COVID-19. How can we do that during the COVID-19?
Enzo, we're very happy. I realize we're going over the allotted time, but if you're happy to share a bit more, then I'm very willing participants here.
Just in 3 minutes, I can do that with you.
Perfect.
Here we are. So can you see the bad boy? It's already there, the bad boy. We are armed, wrestling with this bad guy, unfortunately. And of course, right away, we found out that there was an effort by the plastic industry to revive the dead. Because, of course, there was this huge sentiment in the public opinion against plastics. And they said, now you need us. You need plastics to save you from the pandemics. Already in March 2020, Greenpeace International came up with a statement: industry should not exploit COVID-19 to push for more plastic pollution. And of course, since I'm based in Italy, and Italy was the first country in the Western world to be overwhelmed by the pandemics as early as mid-February 2020, as a zero waster and as the scientific coordinator of Zero Waste Europe, I went trolling for scientific evidence around safety, health, and single-use and reusable materials. And already in February 2020, we had great articles. This one was from the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most credible scientific magazines. And it was about the survival of the virus on different surfaces. You do not have to read through the article. I did it on your behalf. But the summary chart is this one. So we know that the virus survives on cardboard and paper for 24 hours in typical conditions, on stainless steel for 24 hours, on plastics for 72 hours. The key point here is not that it survives longer on plastics. The key point is it survives on whatever the surface. So if you are using single-use materials, you're wrapping something that you want to keep safe, but the wrapping material has been touched by everybody. If we want to stretch out to extreme consequences, follow me. Would you feel safer to drink from your own steel canteen you just filled at your own tap, or from a plastic bottle you just grabbed from the shelf at a supermarket, which may have been touched by anybody? In other words, with single-use materials, we are increasing the turnover of materials coming from outside into our personal sphere, and this makes us more vulnerable, not safer. I'm not making an argument to say that reusables are always inherently safer, but both reusable materials and single-use materials, they have to be codified and subject to the same health and safety conditions. So if you bring your own container, there will be the case that if you deal with that properly, it will make you safer than a single-use material, okay? And this is why basically the European Union, despite the pandemics, they said in a very clear way, we will keep our commitments on the Single-Use Plastics Directive because there is no relationship whatsoever between the current pandemics and our strategies to reduce single-use plastics. Okay, hope this helps you. Of course, I will make my presentation available, use it and disseminate far and wide.
Wow, Enzo, thank you so much. This has been enormously valuable for everyone, I hope. I will, me and Kendra will share the slides. I was going to share as well the case study I've got of Capanori. And I hope you all can stay in touch, actually. Feel free to ask any questions to Enzo. I think if it's all right, Enzo, I'll share your contact with the group.
Yeah, sure. Sure. And I'm very much looking forward to paying you a visit. And of course, yeah, in one of the next eco swims, since unfortunately the northern Tyrrhenian Sea is one of the most affected areas in the Mediterranean Sea by plastic pollution. This is why I typically choose it for my eco swims. And I already had preliminary agreements with the Etrurian Museum from Populonia for an eco swim, which had to take place in March 2020. But then we had the lockdown, and so it was not possible. But as soon as it is possible, we can do that together. And I would like also to have your logo promoting NGOs.
I might even join you on some of the swim.
Yeah, that's great. That would be great.
Perhaps
Keep fit.
we can swim across to Giglio together. I've always wanted to go.
Wow.
No, well, thank you so much, Enzo. Again, brilliant. I mean, I could carry on this conversation for a long time. I have a lot of questions, but perhaps we can look forward. We can organize something else after the summer. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Hope it was useful.
Thank you so much for listening.
We'll send the recording. Thank you all.
More power to your elbow. May the force be with you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.